Do you think an economic collapse or a financial collapse is in the near future for the United States? Is there a possibility for something like hyperinflation? And what does it mean if countries start to abandon the dollar at large? Does that mean that all of a sudden could we see something like what happened in the Weimar Republic in Germany, where people are taking wheelbarrows of cash to the store? I mean, well, what would happen in the United States? Would that also
Right.
just that would cause the empire to implode, right?
Uh-huh. Well, it certainly could. I mean, I, I never want to predict when something like this is going to happen. It's very, very hard to do. But I think it inevitably will happen. Is it going to be months? Is it going to be years? Is it going to go on past another decade? I don't know. And I don't think anybody does. But if you just look at the course that we're on, it's unsustainable. And the only reason that we've been able to sustain, this huge debt so far, and we're just throwing. It's already, what is the debt now? It's
35, 36 trillion. It's
yeah,
hard to keep up.
yeah, because you're right. It's like every 4 or 5 months ago we throw or that go by and we throw another trillion onto the pile there. I mean, it's just so big that we can't. It's hard to even conceive of. And according to general rules of thumb, it's at this point where we should see the beginnings of a crisis. Now, I think the reason we haven't seen a crisis so far, again, is the fact that the U.S. is the world's reserve currency, so we get an extra cushion for that. But that's for the reasons that we've talked about. I don't think that's going to last forever. I mean, I don't think you could ever see nothing's going to last forever. Eventually, the U.S. dollar will cease to be the world's reserve currency, and one of the reasons that it may cease to be the world's reserve currency is this reckless spending. I mean, it's not just the weaponization of the dollar, but the really, let's say, improvident policies or behavior of the U.S. It's going to make a lot of countries, would-be investors think twice about investing in the dollar. You say that, they're printing dollars like crazy. Does it really make sense for me to buy dollars? It looks like the value of the dollar is very questionable. I mean, it's just that it's so. At some point, we have this huge debt, and we were able to get away from it for a long time because interest rates were so low. But then we had a problem with inflation, so we had to raise interest rates. And now we're getting this pressure to actually reduce interest rates again. But which is
It'll lead to more inflation.
yeah, we're going to lead to more inflation. We're in a potentially in a vicious cycle, and it's just like kind of like we're circling the drain right here. It's just like at some point these forces just become impossible to delay or to mitigate in any significant sense, and I think we'll start going. We'll head down the drain. Again, I'm not going to give you a date, but I think it's inevitable. You're just looking at these forces, this combination of debt and and yeah, and in general, so and the weaponization of the dollar are I think are just pushing us right towards the edge, and eventually we're going to go over.
I mean, it's a scary thing. I mean, when we see our currency collapse, I don't know if we would see hyperinflation. Obviously, everybody's going to take a hit. There's going to be a bit of chaos. But I'm wondering if it's a way that we would potentially avoid all-out conflict. It's a way that the empire can kind of would just collapse, and there'd be a chance to rebuild and be a new system on sound money and with cooperation, equal cooperation with other countries around the world.
Uh-huh.
That's a possibility. The
Yeah.
other, I'm trying to find bright spots, Dad. I
Yeah.
don't want our podcast to be all
Yeah, well, there's
doom and
potentially
gloom.
a civil right. I think that's right. I mean, that's a kind of again a foreign policy disaster. Just kind of looking at past incidents such as 9/11, instead of being a wake up call, a chance to re-examine our foreign policy, we just doubled down on our foreign policy, and with the predictable results. But an economic disaster could be a real wake up call. Well, first of all, it could force us um, to end the empire. You know, they close down those bases. They just say we just can't do it anymore, or to pursue these expensive confrontational policy, the proxy war in Ukraine, and so on. So it could have all those benefits, and it may cause us to look inward and finally to re-examine. You know, I would hope so. I think there is a chance of it. So that is a potential, silver lining to the dark cloud of an economic collapse.
And maybe another potential way to have the decline of the empire, which is not a bad thing. You know, it doesn't mean that America is disappears. It means it's a chance for America to be a normal country again.
Right.
Um,
Also, to be the
it's-
America that was envisioned by our founders. You know, remember it was founded as a republic, and they understood the need to keep out of the conflicts of other countries. You know, that was and George Washington and John Adams. They understood that very clearly. That was a vision that they had for this country. And, unfortunately, we've strayed very, very far from that vision, but we could return to it. It's something within our own tradition, right? It's not really a foreign idea. It would be a matter of returning to our roots.
right. Okay. Do you see another path to get to returning to our roots without leading to an all-out conflict?
Well, okay, yeah, that's, no, not really. I'm afraid I really can't think of anything. There, of course, the history is full of surprises. So there always who knows what events could take place, and there are things that we're not even thinking about that we don't see on the horizon that could then suddenly appear and have an impact that we can't imagine.